Alright, so this week we are going to use an awful lot of clay and come out with a single slice of bread. No, what we are going to do is we are going to make basically a cane of bread slices, because I have a lot of projects in the next few months that I want to do that are going to rely on a slice of bread. And rather than remake the bread every time I do a project, I decided to do a video with the bread done in it, and then I can just refer you back to that to make the cane of bread. So stay tuned and see how fun it is to make a cane to make a slice of bread. Alright, so today we are making basically a bread slice cane, and that's because I want to do some projects in the next few weeks / months that are going to require some slices of bread, and I don't want to have to show you how to do this every single time I do those projects. So I'm going to do this today, and then in future weeks I can refer you back to this video for how to make the bread cane. So for it we need 2 colors of clay. I'm using Sculpey 3, and I'll talk in the blog post more about why I pick the clays I do for the various scales. Like, I probably wouldn't do this project with Sculpey if I was doing my smaller dollhouse scale. But for the 18-inch doll scale, I prefer Sculpey 3. We need 2 colors. We need white and we need beige. And you don't need to do this, but I'm actually going to use the full blocks of both. We need equal amounts of each color, and I'm going to mix the whole block. A whole block of white with a whole block of beige. So let's get started. I'm going to start the mixing process on camera, and then I'm going to finish it probably off camera, because it's going to take a while to get this all mixed together, because that's a lot of clay to mix. What I'll probably do is I'll break it into, they have these nice little divisions right there on the clay. I usually break my clay up kind of roughly following those little dividing marks, and then I'll condition one of beige. Now make sure your hands and your work surface are completely clean, because this white clay, and the beige too is really light, it will pick up every bit of dust. So I am going to turn the camera off, and I'm going to condition these. I'm going to mix these together. When I get this set of two pieces mixed together, I'm going to do another set, and then another set, and then another set. Then I'll start putting these together until I have all of the clay mixed into one big batch of clay that's a consistent color with no streaks left. When I get that done, I'll be back and we'll go on to our next step. I just want to hop on really quickly before I mix this last batch of clay together so you can see the difference. It doesn't make a huge difference. It just warms the white up a bit. Hopefully the camera's picking up the color change. It just makes it look more realistic, because bread isn't that bright white that the white clay is. So that's all I wanted to show you here. I'll go finish mixing. Alright, so this is what I got with that clay. I'm going to have plenty of bread, but that's because I want to do several videos for you guys, and the way I can try out the video before I do it for you. I can try out the projects and make sure they work. So you obviously don't need to use 2 whole packages of clay. Now, the next step is optional. I'm going to build in a little bit of initial texture with some cornmeal. And I'll talk in my blog about the pros and cons of using things like cornmeal in your clay. But basically, to work this in, I just dip this down in the bowl, and I work it in. And when it quits dripping off, which it's going to, I dip it in again, and I knead it through. And I'm just going to see how much. It's kind of a by feel thing. I'll work some in and I'll see how I like it. I may or may not use all of what's in this bowl. I haven't decided. I'll decide that as I go. So I'm going to work this in, and when I'm satisfied with my texture, I'll be back and we'll start making a loaf shape. Alright, so I've got the cornmeal worked in, and it's not a huge amount of texture, it's just a head start on texturing this. So I'm going to start by kind of making a cylinder. And from there, I'm going to flatten it against the table, I think. I want the bottom flat. After I get it flat, I'm going to see what my measurements are. This is so sticky. There's one trait that you will find with Sculpey is it is a very sticky clay. Now I want this, that's about right. I want about 1 1/4 inches wide and approximately 1 1/2 inches tall, which is about what I've got. I'm going to use some craft sticks to kind of push against the sides. Ends are not so important, and I want the top to be kind of rounded. Come on. Doesn't have to be a perfect shape. I do want to go in. I've got a double-ended knitting needle. Show how a lot of bread has that kind of mark. And I'm trying to get this about the same height as I had it on the other side. Now, we need to make this look like it's been baked. For that, we need our chalks. The same chalks I use every time I do clay baked goods. Start out with the yellow ochre. And it's going to take a lot of chalk because this is a big piece of clay. Now I will say, if I was going to make a loaf of bread that I was going to leave whole, I would actually use Model Magic. And then you don't have to worry about mixing any colors or anything. Just make it the white. We wanted the color to it because we're going to slice this into slices. So we're going to take our yellow ochre. My brush is dirty from the last time I did something. That's okay, because we're going to use all the colors that we normally do. And we're going to brush this. And we're going to turn it. Didn't really want that to go into our little slot there, but... And if all of our slices aren't perfect, that'll be okay. And I'm picking up dirt off of someplace, and I don't know where. So are we still under camera, kind of, sort of. You can make the same shape loaf as I just made out of the Model Magic and color it exactly the same. And you would have a nice loaf of bread to display with your dolls in a whole bread. If you were doing that, do the ends too with the chalk. I'm not going to bother doing the ends because I'm not going to use this that way. And we will have to kind of neaten up our shape after we slice. Alright, now we need a brown, kind of a reddish brown next. I'm not going to use as much of this. Whoops, I drug my nail across that. That was not good. Now typically, you only have the dark browning above the loaf pan when you're making bread. So we aren't really going to use any of these colors, or at least not the reddish brown down there. Now I need a brown. Use this one this time. I'm just going to put a little of this right there. You'll see why in a little bit. Now don't use too much of this dark or it will look like your doll's burnt the bread. Now go over it again with the yellow, because I want a little more color at the base. I don't want it quite so yellow. Mixing a lot of the yellow into a little bit of brown. Just a little bit of that red that's there, just a tiny bit. My brush is shedding hairs on my loaf of bread. There. So now, before we can cut this, this actually needs to set for probably about 24 hours so that it gets more solid. That will help us to keep from smushing this out of shape while we try to slice it. So I'm going to leave this sitting here on my table. Don't wrap it up during this process, just leave it open. If you've got a lot of dust, lay a paper towel over it, but just let it set up for at least 24 hours. And when that time's done, I'll be back and I'll show you how we make bread slices. Alright, so my bread loaf has now sat here on my table for about 48 hours since I actually worked on it. So it's really firmed up. Because remember, when we get a new batch of clay and we take it out of the package, it's firmer, and then we work with it, it gets soft. Well, it goes back to that firm state. Now I have cleaned my tray off, my tile off multiple times, and because we're going to be working with the white clay on the inside. Take a clay knife, and I'm going to very carefully cut, hopefully cutting straight. And we already have a little bit of texture because of the cornmeal. And now we're going to put more texture in. So I'm going to use several tools. I'm going to use this. This is a wire brush. I bought this at Harbor Freight. It's used for cleaning tools and things. And motors and, you know, guy stuff like that. Oops, it's got something on it. That's okay. I use this a lot. And now I want to use a toothbrush and kind of soften that. And now it looks like a slice of bread, because my bread isn't completely even on the inside. And if your bottom of your loaf is not flat, that's okay. Sometimes a real loaf isn't. Now, where did I put my sandpaper? I want to texture the other side, because I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this particular slice. So I'm going to pick it up carefully, lay it hopefully, and my tray had dust on it from the bottom of the loaf. I'm going to repeat this process. If I was to just put this on my tray, it would actually lose a lot of the texture I just put into it. By putting it on the sandpaper, so there we have some sliced bread. Now we just, and it even looks better after it goes down on the sandpaper. There. We have a slice of bread for the dolls. It's got the nice outside baked looking crust. Let's kind of straighten this up. So I am going to bake this off, and then I'll come back and show you how it looks finished. Alright, so here is our slice of bread that's all baked. It's got a wonderful bread-like texture to it. And it could set out on the doll's, next to the doll's dinner or wherever you would want to display a slice of bread. But the fun part is yet to come. The fun part is when we are going to take this loaf of bread and we're going to make things like, I have some sandwiches planned, we're going to make toast, we're going to make all kinds of things based on this loaf, this cane basically of bread. So to keep your cane safe, put it into a Ziploc sandwich bag and put it someplace where it's protected from getting too hot or too cold and where it won't get smashed. And I look forward to sharing some projects to do with that. So if you haven't found the Facebook page, be sure and check the Facebook page. I usually show a little preview of what's going to be happening on the tutorial, and I show you some other projects too that never make it to tutorials. Also, if you haven't checked the blog post, do go over there and check the blog post, because there will be hopefully some better photos than what I can put on the video, and a lot more information about why I chose the clay I did and why I did the things the way I did. So I will talk to you later. Bye.